It's called brachiation, and they lost their tails, they became the apes, and that's where you wanted me to stop.
Yeah.
Sorry.
He's writing everything down. Explain to me why we still have apes, then. Why haven't they all evolved?
Why on earth should we all have evolved? Apes are doing a very nice job as apes. Actually, they're not doing too well. But in principle, the general question is, why would you, I mean, you're hung up on the idea that humans are the end product of evolution.
No, I'm just curious as to why, if humans evolved into apes, if apes evolved into humans, why didn't they all evolve? Why do we still have apes?
We never evolved from chimpanzees, we never evolved from orangutans, we never evolved from gorillas. Gorillas and chimpanzees and orangutans evolved from a common ancestor which they share with us. So a chimpanzee might just as well say, oh, if chimpanzees evolved from humans, why are there still humans?
Okay. Gentleman over here.
I was wondering if you could give us a succinct definition of what you mean by life.
Succinct, mind.
Yes.
Succinct.
It's not always necessary to give a succinct definition of what you mean by something, because sometimes things gradually merge into other things. If you consider the distinction between a child and an adult, for legal purposes we are obliged to make a succinct distinction between a child and an adult. It happens on the stroke of midnight of the 18th birthday. But everybody knows that there's no real distinction between the child before midnight and after midnight. Similarly, when life began, there may not have been a single moment when you could say, before that we didn't have life, after that we did have life. If I were forced to define that moment, it would be the moment when heredity first came into the world, the moment when the first self-replicating molecule, which is the prerequisite that you need in order for evolution by natural selection to get going. So I suppose my definition of life would be that which evolves by Darwinian natural selection, and that means that it started when the first gene came into the world.
And when was that?
Between 3.5 billion and 4 billion years ago.
Does that fit in with your definition?
Well, it's what Professor Dawkins has to offer as a definition. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. I just want to double check that there aren't people standing upstairs. Yes, sorry, it's just I couldn't actually see you up there. Let's just go right to the very top then. Yes, gentleman in the white shirt.
Professor Dawkins, with the population of the Earth already reaching 6 billion and the increase in medical sciences curing diseases and the increase in IVF, and with many scientists believing the population can't increase it anymore, what's your opinion on that? Are we heading down a wrong path with that increase?
I think it's extremely worrying that our population is growing so fast. It is already, as you say, 6 billion, and that is very worrying. I think you can't just suddenly stop, because that would produce a very weird age distribution. But I do think that population growth is something we do have to face up to. It is one of the most worrying things. I agree with the questioner.
Okay, thank you. And in the middle here, gentleman here.
Yes, Professor Dawkins. I was wondering, you mentioned in your book, God Delusion, that, you mentioned in your book about how some religions are bigoted towards certain races or sexualities. You know, for example, the Westboro Baptist Church. Do you believe that these people actually believe God is telling them to do this, or do you think that they are just using God as a cover for their actions?
The Westboro Baptist Church is a bunch of really very, very weird and unpleasant people, and I would hate to blame the Christian religion for these extreme wingnuts. So the questioner is asking whether they really believe that God is telling them to do that. I couldn't say. I mean, the Westboro Baptist Church is ruled by a patriarch who is clearly an extremely unpleasant man. Does he believe it? I should think he probably does believe that God's telling him to do what he's doing, but I should hate to blame God for him.
I'm not sure there's anybody over here. Do we have anybody with the microphones here? No? Not at the moment. Okay. Let's just go to this gentleman down here then.
Mr. Dawkins, welcome to the Bible Belt. I've been wondering about the interaction between atheistic approaches to science and theistic approaches to science. And what I wonder about is the connection between your atheism and your science, and similarly how you view theistic scientists. We've got Dr. John Lennox coming up here, for example, in a few months' time. Do you think he's a worse scientist because he's a theist? And just generally, how do you view the interaction between theism and science, and do you think it's inferior?
The orthodox position among my fellow scientists is that science and religion have no connection with each other, and they are completely separate from each other. And so you can be a perfectly good scientist whether or not you're an atheist or a theist. It makes absolutely no difference. And your beliefs about religion are private beliefs that do not interfere or interact in any way with your science. And I think this must be true for the many excellent scientists who are religious. I would qualify that in two ways. First, when you hear of a scientist who says he's religious or she's religious, you want to ask very carefully what religion they believe in. It could be what I call Einsteinian religion, which means that they may be fond of using the word religion, they may be fond of using the word God, but they don't actually believe in a supernatural creative intelligence. Einstein certainly did not. Einstein used the word God as a sort of colourful way of expressing his reverence for the mysteries of the universe. So, in the sense that Einstein was religious, so am I. And I think you'll find that a lot of scientists who call themselves religious will, on further inspection, turn out to be religious only in the Einsteinian sense. I take the liberty of saying the same thing about my colleague from my last night's croaked-out encounter in Edinburgh, the former Bishop of Edinburgh, Richard Holloway, who is clearly a very, very saintly man, a very, very intelligent man, calls himself a Christian, but actually is an agnostic, and agrees that he's an agnostic. So I think many of the scientists that claim to be religious will turn out to be religious only in the sense of Einstein or Bishop Holloway. There are others, however, who really are religious in the full Christian or Jewish or Muslim sense.
Is that incompatible with their science?
Well, on the face of it, no, because some of them are very good scientists. I find it hard to see the compatibility. I find it hard to see how they can reconcile it. And in some cases, I think they do it by compartmentalizing their mind into different compartments that don't allow one to enter the other. And that may be true of John Lennox, whom you're expecting a visit from later.
Okay. You happy with that? So, yeah, gentleman over here in the green.
It's the question about the meaning of life, really. Coming back to that, does science give the answer? I think is the question, really. And like a scientist, Nobel Prize-winning scientist like Peter Meadow would say that the question why are we here can't be answered by science. And I don't understand how we can say with such confidence that it can. Well, what I would say about the question why is, why do you think you have any right to ask it? It's not a meaningful question, except unless you specify the kind of answer you're expecting. As a biologist, it's very easy to answer the question, why do birds have wings, for example? I mean, we can do that in Darwinian terms. If you say, however, why do mountains exist? There are some questions which simply don't deserve an answer. I mean, the question,
why do mountains exist? You can give an answer in terms of the geological processes that give rise to mountains, but that's not what you want, is it? You want something about the purpose of mountains. What is the purpose of a mountain? It's a silly question. Doesn't deserve an answer. The mere fact that you can ask a question, the mere fact that you can frame a question in the English language, doesn't mean that it's entitled to an answer. If I say to you, what is the colour of jealousy? It's a perfectly grammatical English sentence, but it's not a question that deserves an answer. The correct answer is, don't ask such a silly question.
But is it not part of the human condition to ask these questions?
It may well be part of the human condition to ask silly questions, yes.
But maybe that's why people turn to religion, is to find that answer.